We've already told you about attitudes toward love and sex in ancient Rus, the Ottoman Empire, Victorian England, and ancient India. But only in ancient China could such things be imagined. Is it true that in the Celestial Empire, sex wasn't for pleasure at all? Did Emperor Huangdi write the first sex manual? Why was a harem in China far from being a man's paradise? What was the most unusual type of marriage invented there? Did a Chinese princess really have her own bed in a brothel? And what's the secret of Taoist sexual techniques? So, our heroine is named Nu Zi, and she lived an ordinary life. She made wine and sold it in her wine shop. But one day, an unusual visitor came to her. He drank a lot, and when he ran out of money, he left some ancient manuscript as collateral. Nu Zi accepted the collateral, and after the visitor left, she took a look at it. It turned out to be the book The Sincere Maiden, one of the Taoist texts on sex. What she saw there shocked her. In the West, under the influence of Christianity, sex is seen as a sin requiring repentance and atonement, but in the Taoist tradition of ancient China, a special attitude toward physical love developed. Here, it was a whole science, essential for enlightenment and health. The process of union between a man and a woman was viewed as part of the natural order and was a sacred duty for everyone. There was no sense of sin that became the foundation of Western civilization. In Taoism, there is no eternal division. The body is bad, and the spirit is good. Both are wonderful. Moreover, sex was believed to transform sexual energy into spiritual energy. According to Taoist doctrine, everything in the world consists of the dark female principle Yin and the bright male principle Yang. The task of a person was to achieve harmony between these two principles. As one of the Taoist texts states, if you know the way to unite Yin and Yang, you can experience all 5 kinds of pleasures. But if you don't master this art, your life will end before its time. The sexual union, according to ancient sages, was equally beneficial for both men and women. Unlike in Western civilization, in Taoism, a woman was not considered a vessel of sin and evil. Her physiology was not attributed sinful qualities. On the contrary, because of her, a woman was considered the gate of life. And although she was assigned a strictly second place after the man, Taoists assured that this second place was just as the earth occupies the second place after the sky. From Taoism also came all of Chinese medicine, from acupuncture to martial arts. A person was viewed as a concentration of life energy qi, which flows through the meridians of the body and ensures the balance of yin and yang. Ancient Chinese doctors concluded that the most important thing for health was the harmonious circulation of life energies throughout the body. The female principle Yin is receptive, intuitive, watery, and lunar, practically inexhaustible. By the way, it can be replenished by walking among flowers. For a man to cultivate Yin energy within himself, he had to communicate with beautiful women. And the most effective way to cultivate Yin was to take this communication to the bedroom, especially if done according to the science. As a result, many treatises on the art of the bridal chamber appeared in ancient China. Interestingly, one of these ancient sex treatises is said to have been written by the legendary Emperor Huangdi, the founder of Chinese civilization. This part of life was considered so important. It's like if in Rus, a treatise on the intricacies of sex were attributed to Rurik. Now imagine you live in ancient China, and your parents have found you a husband who, by the way, seemed extremely attractive to you. You fell in love, finally got married, and stepped over the threshold of his house. Everything seems perfect. But no, from now on, you not only have to establish a relationship with your husband's relatives. You also have to establish relationships with his concubines, and not only avoid being jealous of your beloved's duties and affections towards other women in the house, but also establish contact with them. Yes, in ancient China, many families were polygamous. The number of concubines a man could have was determined by his social status. As Robert Van Gulik writes in his book Sexual Life in Ancient China, a young wife had to clearly define her likes and dislikes, which often took on a lesbian character, to coexist successfully with other women in the household. Undoubtedly, this often led to intense conflicts and even tragedies. In the first months of marriage, the husband was not allowed to defend his young wife or take her side. However, after analyzing ancient Chinese literature, Robert Van Gulik emphasizes, there is every reason to believe that the average Chinese woman was no less happy and no more unhappy than the average European woman of that time, who lived by the principles of a monogamous family. Considering that European women of that era also had their struggles, this may well be true. Van Gulik also asserts that the average Chinese family man with a harem was not necessarily happier than his average Western contemporary with only one wife. A harem in ancient China was far from a male paradise. In such a highly developed civilization as China's, wives and concubines had specific positions and rights enshrined by the state. The harem owner was obliged not only to provide pleasure and support to all his concubines, but also to show them special attention, consider their whims and weaknesses, and manage the relationships between the women. Most importantly, he had to prevent conflicts within his large polygamous family. An official who couldn't maintain order in his household, whose wives quarreled, could lose his position. A merchant could lose the essential trust in his trade, as a disorderly home was believed to inevitably face financial difficulties. Polyandry was forbidden among the Han Chinese and considered immoral, although it existed among other ethnic groups in China. However, the Chinese found their own unique customs. Among the nobility, there was another unusual form of marriage called sororit. This was when a man married not only a particular woman but also all her sisters, including cousins. So, what did it mean to be beautiful in ancient China? Etiquette dictated that a woman's face always remain impassive and her movements restrained and graceful. Beauties would apply a thick layer of white makeup, use plenty of rouge and lipstick, and place great importance on the shape of their eyebrows. In ancient China, there were more than 30 fashionable eyebrow shapes. Imagine such variety. For instance, eyebrows could be shaped like butterfly wings or mountain peaks. Hairstyles received as much attention as eyebrows. Hair was meticulously arranged and adorned with diadems, jeweled hairpins, and combs. The names of hairstyles were also remarkable, like dragon playing with a pearl or dragon rising from the sea. An elegant woman was expected to change her hairstyle daily and alter its style once a month. The masterpiece of hairdressing art was the skillful combination of two elements, cloud and dragon, so that the dragon's presence, hidden by the cloud, was only hinted at. With the advent of the Song dynasty, the ultimate traits for Chinese beauty were frailty and delicacy. No curves, no large breasts or buttocks. Tiny feet, as small as hands, became the center of a whole cult. However, the women who possessed these small feet suffered greatly. Girls' feet were bound in a special way to deform them, a process that took 3 years. Women with such feet were considered the epitome of beauty. Only those with bound feet could become concubines of noblemen, even if they were from a simple background. This practice served as a social elevator, but condemned women to a form of disability, as they couldn't even stand without assistance. Let's return to our heroine, who got her hands on the secret treatise of Chinese sages. Taoist books on the art of the bridal chamber were intended only for those who devoted their lives to attaining the Great Way. Outsiders had no access to them. Clever New Z realized the treasure she had and quickly copied selected chapters. When the Taoist came back for his collateral, she returned the book to him. After thoroughly studying it, she decided to take action. She set up a bedroom in her shop where she gathered chi energy with young men, using techniques from the Taoist treatise. 30 fun-filled years passed this way. Through continuous practice, she rejuvenated and now looked like she was 20. Then, the immortal Taoist came back to her wine shop. Although Taoist techniques were available only to the select few and ancient China was mainly patriarchal, there was no puritanism or hypocrisy regarding intimate life. Sexual education was encouraged, and it was customary to gift newlyweds a Chinese equivalent of the Kama Sutra at their wedding. What was normal for an Eastern polygamous family seemed like wild promiscuity to a Western monogamous civilization. The expedition to China in the 13th century by Venetian traveler Marco Polo was one of the most significant milestones in the history of geographic discoveries and full of fascinating ethnographic details. Marco Polo describes how, once in an inn, the Chinese host offered him not only a bed but also his wife for company. The famous traveler was very surprised that the woman welcomed this development with enthusiasm. He later learned that this custom was common in northern China. This way, in remote areas, they improved their bloodline and attracted the luck of travelers, who were usually merchants and therefore wealthy people. Despite this, traditional close relationships between husband and wife did not exist in Chinese tradition. Outside the bedroom, everything was extremely complicated. Spouses had to avoid any physical contact. God forbid their sleeves touch when handing something to her husband, and they certainly couldn't use each other's cups or plates. Even in bed, they couldn't call each other by name. Don't believe it? Listen to how the rules of behavior for spouses are described in the Liji, the Book of Rites, part of the Confucian 5 Classics. Men and women do not use the same coat racks. A wife should not hang her clothes on her husband's stand, nor can she put them in the same drawer with his. Husband and wife never bathe together. If a man hands something to a woman, she must accept it on a bamboo tray. If there isn't one handy, both must crouch. The man places the item on the ground, and the woman picks it up. When walking on the street, the man stays on the right side, and the woman on the left. Spouses had to follow these prescriptions until they were 70 years old. But the most interesting things happened in the emperor's palace, where everything was much more complicated. By the 11th century, the emperor's harem included over 100 beauties. We have a separate video about this. The emperor's personal life affected the well-being of the entire nation, so Chinese sages created a whole system here as well. The empress had the right to a night of love during the full moon. It was believed this was the most likely time to conceive an heir. After her, on the second and third day, his favorite concubines were brought to the emperor's chambers, sometimes even in groups of 3 at a time. On other days, he shared his bed with 10 concubines. During the new moon, the least favorite concubines were brought to him. Given such an attitude toward intimate life, brothels were perfectly legal and respectable establishments. So much so that even daughters of the emperor frequented them. For instance, Princess Shan-in of the Song dynasty, who lived around 1,000 years ago, even had her own bed in an upscale brothel. She spent nights with 30 of the most handsome men, simultaneously. She managed to arrange this by appealing to her brother, the emperor, who was also known for his orgies with concubines and eunuchs. She told him, "You have over 10,000 women in your palaces, and I only have one husband. It's unfair." After this, her brother organized her leisure time with 30 consorts. Now, let's return to our heroine, who found herself face to face with the very same immortal Taoist sage. He immediately noticed the changes in her and how she had become much younger over the past 30 years. He said, "Stealing the Tao and understanding it without a teacher is like having wings but not knowing how to fly." After this, he took the beautiful New Zi and led her away to unknown places to study the Tao and the secrets of eternal life through union. She was never seen again in her wine shop. So what was written in that treatise? What are the secrets of Taoist sexual techniques? Buddhist monk Daoan, who lived in the 3rd to 4th centuries, wrote, "The Taoists, in their depravity, adhered to obscene practices outlined in the Yellow Book, such as opening the gates of life, embracing the adept infant, and the dragon joins with the tiger." But these are the words of a Buddhist monk. What did the Taoists themselves write? They wrote about strengthening yang through yin and strengthening yin through yang energy. Let me quote from the very book our heroine acquired: "Man and woman create each other just as heaven and earth generate each other. Heaven and earth follow the path of unity, so their existence has no end. Humans lose the way of uniting and separating, leading them to an early demise. However, if you can avoid actions that gradually cause harm and master the art of uniting yin and yang, you thereby attain the path to immortality. There is a way of uniting man and woman in which the man escapes decrepitude and the woman is cured of all ailments. The heart and mind retain contentment and joy, and the strength of the chi energy breath is enhanced. However, if you cannot practice this way, you gradually wither and fall ill." Taoism profoundly influenced all Chinese culture, including philosophy and art, where harmony and restraint were also required. Even Confucius said that a man should combine wisdom and strength. Wisdom is the Taoist secrets, and strength is the martial arts, as one must be able to defend against predators, enemies, and natural disasters. This was the foundation of the entire Chinese world.